If you ever feel the urge to buy an NFT, just buy a cloak instead. Welcome to Wow of True, the podcast of your wildest memes.
We talk about niche internet fame, interview people who are making it on the internet, and chart our own misguided quest for online attention. I'm your newly becloaked wizard, Isabel.
Isabel did get a cloak, and I'm Amanda. I don't have a cloak, but I wish I did. Anyone could be famous on the internet, so why not us?
You know, you could have gotten a cloak. Hey, speaking of wizards.
Yeah.
Truly, we are full of continuity because we talked about N.K. Jemisin in a previous episode. And the other day, one of our friends, Nikhil, met N.K. Jemisin and got her to do a shout out in real life to us that he recorded, which is incredible. Love that for us.
Maybe I'll edit it in here.
Hi, Wizard Chat.
Thank you.
Specifically a shout out to the Wizard Fiction chat, because we have a group chat called Wizard Fiction where we talk about wizard fiction. And I think a notable scene setting moment here is that everybody's nickname in the group chat is just Wizard Amanda, Wizard Wizard Allison.
It really is just that, huh?
After N.K. Jemisin noticed us, we did try tweeting at her to get her to notice us again, but she did not respond to our tweets, even though I am a blue check. And blue check people have a separate notification feed of notifications from blue checks. So I was really hoping that we'd slide in there, but no, N.K. Jemisin is just way too cool for us. It's fine.
We're clearly not funny enough for her, that's fair. But anyway, my point is that we failed to cause internet drama despite, having real life effects. And speaking of writer internet drama, when you pitched this week's episode idea, Amanda, I was obviously immediately on board, but I think it's funny because speaking of continuity, we've been pretty good about it. In some ways today's episode, which is actually not about N.K. Jemisin, this was a fucking bait and switch. It's a direct follow-up to our last episode, which was also about writers being deranged on the internet, which is also what this episode is about. But it's also about NFTs, which is what our conversation with Steve Ibsen way back in episode 16. You should go listen to that, by the way, if you haven't. It's a pretty good episode.
It's one of our better ones, I think.
Honestly, I like it a lot.
It was a good one.
And also, this episode is about fanfic. Anyway, Amanda, what are we talking about today?
To even further obscure the timeline of the continuity, the guest who will be on our next episode is the one who told me about this internet drama first. Although literally 5 people sent me this internet drama, and you have a brand when 5 people send you the young adult writer NFT fanfiction internet drama.
Hey, what does this say about you, Amanda? Does this say good things about you? Does it say bad things about you?
This says that I'm clearly someone who needs to own a cloak and I should buy a cloak like you did. Anyway, so 6 prominent young adult authors announced a project this week called Realms of Ruin. Basically, these 6 writers, Tahereh Mafi, Ransom Riggs, Adam Silvera, Marie Lu, David Yoon, and Nicola Yoon, worked together to create a fictional universe called Realms of Ruin. They had published 12 origin stories to introduce people to how the universe works, what is the realm, what's the ruin, etc. Based on those origin stories that these professional New York Times bestselling, award-winning writers would write origin stories. And then fans come in and are invited to write fan fiction contributing to the universe. Honestly, seems all pretty innocuous, collaborative project between fans and writers.
You say it's pretty innocuous, but I feel like it's pretty weird. This is a weird project to begin with because I feel like whenever authors bring fans in and invite contribution, there's always some weird sort of catch.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, it all seems pretty innocuous, but within a few hours of announcing the project, it got canceled. So, what was the catch, Isabel?
Wow, I wonder what it could be. It's not like I mentioned that we talked about NFTs with Steve Ibsen earlier in this podcast. Is it NFTs?
The catch is indeed NFTs. They wanted to do this through NFTs, and there is no faster way to ring alarm bells in the minds of young adult dystopian literature readers than to mention the thing that is a new thing that people don't totally understand how it works, but they do understand that it is supposed to be very bad for the environment and climate change is a real threat. Recycle and stuff eat less meat if you can anyway. Yeah, so honestly, this stuff is super confusing, but it is my job to somewhat know about it, so I do somewhat know about this. And I became very quickly frustrated because people just like very clearly didn't understand how NFTs work, and this was causing them to like make the project sound even more scammy, even though it already kind of like sounded scammy. So basically, here's how they explained it on their website. Realms of Ruin will go live on November 8th with a robust collection of original character NFTs, a sweeping fantastical world, and 12 origin stories, all built on top of the Solana blockchain. Like, people don't know what that means.
Yeah, that sure is just a lot of word salad. And then, like, it continues, join us in expanding these stories by adding your own, purchasing the official character cards, and playing in these worlds. Your tales can be minted into NFTs whose value could rise as your readership does. As the world expands, the authors will be reading closely to decide which stories and characters are compelling enough to become canon.
And the thing is, even just like, as somebody who is more familiar with NFTs than the average person, even reading this, I was like, wait, so do you have to purchase the character NFTs to be able to use them in your stories? Like, are you buying something so that you can participate in this collaborative project with prominent young adult authors who have many teenage fans? See, this is the thing, is that I feel like the biggest problem facing crypto is that people that like crypto are insufferable and bad at marketing.
The problem with crypto is that the people who like crypto are
annoying.
Yeah, they fucking suck.
But I mean, because, like, the average person doesn't understand, like, why would cryptocurrency be potentially a good thing, potentially keyword, and then the examples they see of it are, like, Dogecoin and, like, horse racing and, like, somebody buying Nyan Cat for over $500,000, and then they're like, this is dumb and this is a scam. And I think that's a very valid assessment to have based on those stories.
Yeah, and, like, related to that, like, this sounds like a scam, or it sounds so vague as to not be anything. Like, to continue the last bit of it, Realms of Ruin is as much about storytelling as it is about building a new online Web3 community for readers, writers, creators, and innovators. That just sounds to me like they were trying to put as much SEO into that phrase as possible.
I write about Web3 and I don't know how to explain what Web3 means.
Okay, try right now. I want to hear your explanation.
Okay, so basically Web 2, which is the web that most things are now, is like Facebook being the ad-supported internet. Like, Facebook runs on ads. We are the product in our current social media. Like, our attention on ads is why we get these things for free. So a lot of early Web3 projects are like, what if instead of us being the product, you pay like $5 and then there's no ads, and then there's also ways of like being rewarded for good posting? It's more decentralized. Don't quote me on my Web3 explanation. Do you have anything to add?
That was like a pretty concise explanation of Web3. I think it's also one of those things where Web3 is kind of being defined as stuff is going on. I feel like people who talk about Web3 also talk about like the metaverse.
Oh no.
Which we're not going to talk about here. We can't talk about that.
My hottest take here is I think that not all the ideas in this project are so offensive. Because...
Ooh, spicy. Okay, what do you think is good from this? Tell me more.
Okay, so basically the idea, you're writing stories that are part of a larger universe, and we'll get more into like how NFTs and crypto works, but just bear with us here. You want to be able to get paid for your creative contribution to the world, and you want for all of the people who helped build that world to also have credit. So let's say you're a contributor to Realms of Ruin and you create a character called like Apple. And then I decide I really like Isabel's character, Apple. I'm gonna write a story about Apple. And then my story gets like tons of attention and somebody buys my story because on the blockchain, my story would be referencing your story and your story would maybe be referencing another person's story. There's like a tree of...
Well, this just sounds like the monetization of fanfic.
I mean, it is. But I think in the case of monetization, whether or not we think fanfic should be monetized is not this particular thing, but I do think it's interesting to think about having like a tree and like data going back on the blockchain of this person's story was in response to this person who was in response to this person, and you can track how the story evolved over time, and also like royalties can be maybe more fairly shared than they would not on a blockchain.
Yeah, that is kind of like an interesting concept.
Should we do a brief what is blockchain here? Because I think this is relevant before we go deeper into this story. So, first, what is cryptocurrency and why is it related to NFTs? Cryptocurrencies are things like when you hear people talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, that's cryptocurrency. They are decentralized financial systems built on technology called the blockchain, which is essentially just a ledger of every transfer and transaction made on it. And there's no like central bank controlling everything, so that makes it harder for the government to regulate it. And I mean, we could be here forever, but there's pros and cons to that.
Truly, like, you can open up, like, any tech journalist thing, and there will be so many of the pros and cons listed. Or Twitter. You could see them on Twitter. But basically, NFTs are related to crypto because they're also built on the blockchain. And, like, you're mostly seeing the Ethereum blockchain used for that. Like, you don't see Bitcoin NFTs. That's just not what that's used for. So, basically, Bitcoin and Ethereum have in common is that they both, like, validate the information that's generated through an algorithm referred to as, quote-unquote, proof of work. And this is super energy intensive. This is why people talk a lot about how Bitcoin is horrible for the environment and, like, bad for climate change and stuff. And that's, like, one of the arguments that people use against it. And so that's also why you've heard people talk about NFTs being bad for the environment. And that's because to validate something through proof of work, a computer has to do like a lot of calculations that use up a lot of energy. And not all blockchains, however, are proof of work. For example, a blockchain called Solana uses proof of stake, which uses up to 99% less energy, some sources say. Amanda wrote this part, quite frankly, so if I'm wrong here, blame Amanda. And we also don't know how exact that amount is.
Yeah, I mean, this is also why, like, the crypto sphere can be really frustrating because it's like, there's no easily accessible data of, like, how much less energy intensive is Solana than Ethereum. But so, Ethereum is what most NFTs that you probably hear about, like Nyan Cat and stuff, Ethereum is the blockchain that powers that, and Ethereum uses proof of work, which is the super energy intensive one. Ethereum is supposed to move to proof of stake, so people are like, oh, NFTs aren't going to be so bad for the environment soon because Ethereum at some point that some unspecified time, I've heard 2022, who knows, Ethereum is going to go to proof of stake and be less energy intensive. But Solana is already proof of stake, but people don't use that instead of Ethereum as often as you would think, just because there's other pros and cons there.
This got technical.
Extreme overview, but I do think this extreme overview is relevant to the story.
To cut in, can I just say that it's like very interesting how much technology and like how much like opaque bullshit that unless you're already involved in this community you understand goes into, hey, we made some characters, play with them in the sandbox for money.
That's why people got so mad, because people don't understand, but also because they did such a terrible job explaining what they were trying to do.
I totally agree with you. I just think it's funny as hell.
Oh no, for sure. I mean, this is why we have to do an entire episode about this, because it's like, there's the NFT issue, there's the copyright issue, there's the monetizing fanfic issue, there's the teenagers yelling at best-selling authors on Discord issue. Like, this is everything that we love on WoW if true.
My god, it's just issues all the way down.
Issues all the way down. But so, moving forward, what we need to know is that Realms of Ruin is using Solana, which is the one that's way, way, way less energy intensive. So immediately people are like, oh my god, this writer, Marie Lu, who writes about like a dystopian world where Los Angeles is flooded, blah, 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 environment, futuristic, bad. She's killing the environment with NFTs. But like, Solana NFTs are not Ethereum NFTs. So that was my personal pet peeve as an annoying tech reporter, is I was like, you guys don't know the difference between Ethereum and Solana.
Hey, you know that thing about like if you stare into the void, like the void stares back? I feel like that's you and Bitcoin, like blockchain, NFTs, tech in general. Like next thing I know, you're gonna be like, actually like, and also like moving to Silicon Valley to work at like, I don't know.
Oh my god. No. No, I don't want to live in Silicon Valley. Okay, here's where I redeem myself, is I don't want to direct my anger at a random person who doesn't know the difference between Solana and Ethereum. I want to direct my anger at these crypto bros who cannot explain for the life of them what they are dedicating their life to studying. You gotta do like the elevator pitch, but the elevator pitch for crypto is like 5 hours long. And to be clear, I feel very ambivalent about crypto. I think there are pros and cons. Like, I feel extremely neutral about this. And I feel like that's honestly like the weirdest position to take, because I feel like people either hate crypto or love crypto. And I'm just like, it's a thing.
You're just like just okay about crypto, which is actually the most controversial crypto opinion to have. I have the opinion of crypto is pretty bad. However, I do own some Bitcoin. And like, that's not great either. That's also something I should be canceled for on the internet. Do not fucking cancel me. There are funnier things to cancel me for.
Oh yeah, like how your favorite food is corn.
God damn it! I did say that in our Discord server. I did do that.
Corn's good. I think corn is underrated.
Corn is aggressively underrated, except for the fact that high fructose corn syrup is in everything in America, which is a problem with our food. Anyway.
Oh, also, wait. So have you seen the meme where it's like corn turns into high fructose corn syrup, turns into candy corn?
Wait, I did see that. That's good.
It's a good meme. Halloween episode, baby. Anyway, so yeah, I feel like I'm really, this feels really cathartic to explain how frustrating it is to feel extremely ambivalent about crypto. I think there's some things that are extremely bad. I think that there's some things that have really interesting potential.
Your ambivalence about crypto makes this very hard to like dunk on you on, other than to be like, yeah, it's like, have some stronger feelings, man. I don't know. Okay, so do you think this project is like, what do you think went wrong with this project, other than like, they were simply not able to explain NFTs?
Okay, so I think what happened is, also shout out to like this random teenager on Twitter who just like screenshotted all of the Discord arguments, because literally within like 5 hours, this project went from getting announced to just like getting erased from the internet. And some teen on Twitter, who knew the teens used Twitter in the first episode of Gossip Girl, they say that only people over 30 use Twitter, but we're 25, so suck it. So this teen like screenshotted all of the Discord conversations, because like, shout out to that teen. And people would ask extremely basic questions like, so if you're minting a story as an NFT, can I get sued for copyright? Because the copyright, as stated on the website, which also no longer exists, but is on the Wayback Machine, says copyright and then those 6 authors' names. So then if you're monetizing off of somebody else's copyright, is that okay? And the actual legal answer to this, which I know because I talked to a lawyer who is not Isabel, is that it would depend on the contract. Like, presumably there would be a terms and conditions on the website of like, if you check this box, then when you mint your NFT, you are allowed to use the copyright, but maybe you're not allowed to do other things, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what their contract would be. But we don't know what their contract would be because it got shut down in like 5 hours.
I would love to see that contract.
But like, that's an extremely normal question to ask, especially when fanfic writers have routinely been like fighting for their right to just like write little stories about like Draco and Harry falling in love.
Little stories? I mean, I think you mean 200k epics about Draco and Harry falling in love.
You're so right. I feel like the longest thing I've ever read is like an 800k Harry Potter fanfic.
Oh my god, you've read it twice. You can't say shit to me about the corn thing when you've done that.
I know, honestly, literally, like, my most problematic traits are that I feel ambivalent about crypto and that I read The Dead of Time twice.
You know, truly, like, I feel like these two facts, like, say so much about your character. I don't even mean in a good or bad way, but just in kind of this is kind of who you are, huh? Yeah, no, because I feel like I don't understand how this project was so badly handled. How did nobody say to these authors beforehand, hey, people might get mad about this? Because I feel like this has so many of the elements of things people love to get mad about on the internet, which is like talking about like fanfic, authors trying to monetize their fan base, cryptocurrency in general.
It was really the perfect storm for an absolute shit show. So you had the 6 authors involved, but like there were also developers involved who were more like techie people, I believe, that knew more of like how this was going to work on the back end. Mm-hmm. Another thing that you might not know about NFTs if you haven't like minted an NFT before or whatever is that To mint an NFT, generally you're paying a gas fee and or a transaction fee, which is basically just like you're paying for the energy it's taking for the blockchain to like do the shit for you. And so on Ethereum, which is more energy intensive, I've seen gas fees that are like $40, $50. It fluctuates based on the value of the currency, which is extremely volatile, which is also why crypto's a shit show. Cryptocurrencies are extremely volatile, so it's hard to say, like, this is how much a gas fee is. But so compared to that, on Solana, the gas fees are like cents. But again, like, who knows if it's always going to be cents? We don't know because crypto is so volatile and weird.
Speaking of that, I made $25 on Coinbase in the last hour.
Oh, nice. No, yeah, Bitcoin's been up.
Nice.
Also, okay, Dogecoin and, like, the Shiba Inu coin are literally not meant to have value. The value is simply memes.
And that's not valid, but in a weird way, I do support it.
This is not investing advice or financial advice or legal advice, but maybe if you were investing in something, do not invest in something that is not intended to have value.
Nah, I think it's good. I think it's funny.
The value is that it's funny. You're so right.
I feel like we've gotten off topic here.
Yes. People started getting mad because they thought you are paying these authors to mint your story, but you're paying like a couple of cents to Solana. But you can see how this would be easily misconstrued as like pay $50 to write fanfic. Or also like, do you have to buy the character NFTs to write the fanfic? No, those were just going to be like collectible items.
The thing is, even after you've explained this all to me, I don't understand how writing the fanfic and becoming part of that universe meshes with the NFTs thing.
Also, full disclosure, for my actual job, I am writing about this, and by the time this episode comes out, that article should be out, so please read it so that I feel good inside. But only through me being a journalist and trying to get to the bottom of why this whole thing happened, I talked to, quotes, a source with knowledge of the project. You can read more about this on TechCrunch.com, a good website, and you should subscribe to TechCrunch Plus. I feel like I have to do a plug in order to use my reporting on the podcast. But a source close to the project said that the idea was that you're selling the character NFTs to people that are more like onboarded into crypto, and then that money goes into a community treasury, which they also did a terrible job explaining. But I was told that the idea behind the community treasury would be that they would pay for people's gas fees so that people didn't feel like they were like paying to upload stories, or that they would use those to like give financial incentives to people for like writing good fanfic, or the community would have some kind of input in what happens with the money in the community treasury.
See, that was like completely opaque.
No, yeah. They also explained really badly what the community treasury was, as we know from the screenshots that the wonderful teen on Twitter posted. Somebody literally asked, what does it mean that the community decides what happens to the money in the community treasury? Like, if people just all decided one day, like literally this is what they said, if people all decided, let's donate the money to UNICEF, would that happen? And the guy was like, yeah, I guess. And it's just like, that doesn't explain like what the purpose of the community treasury is, what money is being put into the treasury, because people were still under the impression that it was like the gas fee that was going into the treasury, but that's not how that works. They could not have done a worse job marketing this, because I don't think that they had bad intentions.
You know, it's hard for me to even figure out whether they had intentions at all. I don't understand the thought process of anyone involved in this where they thought this was a good idea that would definitely work and that people would be enthusiastic about.
I mean, again, this is my hot take, is I feel like in 10 years, this is going to be extremely normal.
But also, like, okay, so here's my other hot take. I think that this would have gone over a lot better if it wouldn't have gone over better, but I think it would have been like less of a shit show if it wasn't a new media property. Does that make sense? Or think about it. If people did this was like monetization of Avengers fanfic, in a weird way, I think that would have worked better, maybe. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think that everybody involved in this project made a fundamental miscalculation, not even on the crypto level, but just on the way that fan bases interact with creators and how fans of authors interact with the source material, and how like you can't ask people to create content for you even if there's going to be some like a small monetary benefit to them without first having that like passion. If I, a fan of any of these writers, looked at this, I would say that this sounds like they're trying to monetize my interest in a certain fandom. And in this case, that fandom is something that they haven't created yet, but they're like, oh, we're making it and the best things will get popular and like we'll like judge everything. And like that's not what communities in fandom support in a lot of ways. Like there's like kind of like a whole like maybe like a gloss of like egalitarianism, even though it's not really the truth in fan communities.
No, there's so much of this that's so hard to quantify, even when we talk about like the community treasury and like what the community decides. It's like, how do you know what the community decides? Is it a democratic voting system? Because I also think that like there's also the element of you have the potential to shape canon, and the authors decide what gets canonized. So what if somebody writes a story and all the fans are like, hell yeah, we love that story, and the authors don't, and then they don't canonize it? Then it's like, it becomes weirdly anti-egalitarian in that way, in that, like, I mean, yes, these people are the ones that took the time to make this project and create this world that now does not exist, but they're kind of making it like, oh, it's all about the community, but then at the same time being like, we essentially decide what happens.
It feels like that they're going to be like judging everything that's happening in a way that I don't love and I think is a little bit weird.
It is a huge ask to be like, write fanfic about this thing that may or may not be good.
Like, I think this is also actually just symptomatic of the way that the creator-fan boundary has broken down a lot in the last 10 years. Not to bring this back to Supernatural.
We're really hitting every note in our podcast.
Listen, this is greatest hits today. But not to talk about Supernatural, but like Supernatural had a whole thing about like how it became popular when internet fan culture was also becoming popular, and navigating the new relationship between creators and fans, in the sense that fans had like fucking unprecedented access to creators on social media and could really talk back. Like, this is almost like what that feels like in a lot of ways, except with Web 3.0.
You know the project is doomed when it gets compared to Supernatural. But I guess my question for you, to move into more just general, like, fanfic monetization, is how do you think people would have reacted to this project if it was just, like, no crypto?
See, the thing is, I think even then they wouldn't have liked it. I think the way that it was pitched was almost condescending in a way that I think would have turned a lot of creators off. Like, so like to go back to the original pitch, which we said earlier, it's like, you are cordially invited to join New York Times bestselling and award-winning authors, blah, blah, blah. And like, it almost sounds like condescending in the way that they pitched it, where it's like, oh, here, join like the actual creatives and like, you know, get judged by them and then see if your work is as good as theirs. And you know, the thing is, I think you have to earn that in a lot of ways. And I think the mistake they made here is assuming that clout in previous projects would translate to clout in a new project. Does that make sense? Because I think if somebody who was like doing like an ongoing thing, like okay, not to talk about Homestuck, but to talk about Homestuck.
Really greatest hits episode.
Listen, I think if Andrew Hussey in the middle of Act 6 had done something like this, the fans would have been on board. But like, that's because like he had earned it with the previous 6 acts of bullshit. Whereas here, it's very much like there's a new project and, oh, do you want to get in on the ground floor? Like, that kind of like pings, I think, a lot of people's like scam buttons.
Oh yeah, I mean, also like NFTs ping a lot of people's scam buttons, which I want to be clear in my ambivalence about crypto, that like a lot of NFTs are scams. Don't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a JPEG. That, you know, this is financial advice. I have no credentials to give you financial advice, but I'm going to tell you, just like, don't do that.
I think that's just like general human being advice. Like, don't spend money that you could lose on things that don't exist.
But do buy a cloak at the Ren Fair.
Yes, because that's physical and you will derive a great joy and serotonin from it.
If you ever feel the urge to buy an NFT, just buy a cloak instead.
Yeah, like, will you have the NFT in 30 years? No, because we'll be living in an apocalyptic wasteland that was created by overuse of energy resources from, you know, Bitcoin.
That is a potential.
But you will have the cloak.
But it's okay because Ethereum's gonna move to proof of stake.
Oh god, okay. The problem is it's so much fun to clown on it.
Because people are so annoying, because they're like, we're gonna make Ethereum better. But when? I don't know. The worst thing about crypto is the people. Not even the energy. The people are even worse than destroying the planet.
Damn.
I'm sorry.
That's, Now, we don't have time to unpack all of that.
I'm talking out of my ass. Don't at me.
I think we've gone as far as we can on the crypto thing. What else do we have to say about this?
Monetizing fanfic. Copyright and fanfic.
Yeah, okay, so like the thing is, the copyright issue here is a totally separate one from the NFT thing, and I think a lot of people have been conflating the two.
Yes.
Because of the way that it was pitched, where everything was fucking conflated. The thing about copyright, though, is that, like, I think actually this would have been fine copyright-wise, but even without the NFT thing, there would have been a big upcry depending on how they did the copyright thing. And this is super general, this is not legal advice, but basically the way it works is that, like, there could have hypothetically been a thing, like some sort of, like, terms and conditions, that sort of situation, where the people who are participating sign away their rights in the writing that they're doing, some sort of work for hire situation, and people would have gotten mad about that because people always get mad about the sort of like work for hire, like signing away your writing to other parties situation. Like that's a big thing in publishing. Like you always want to make sure that you retain the rights. Now this would be further complicated by the fact that this is objectively fan fiction, but I think people would have still gotten mad, and like rightly so. The other thing here is that it would have gotten interesting if they hadn't had that sort of terms and conditions situation, because then who does this shit belong to is kind of an interesting question. Like obviously this is derivative works, and now we're gonna, like, we already did like a big copyright thing in the last one, so I'm not gonna go into this, but there's a lot of legal hurdle here that are different than the NFT hurdles, but are not ultimately an issue. But people would have gotten mad about them, because remember Sonia and Dawn?
Remember our friends from last episode, Sonia and Dawn?
Remember our good friends Sonia and Dawn? I wonder how they're doing right now.
So essentially, just for a combination of all of the reasons that we're discussing, of weird fanfic monetization, crypto makes no sense, internet, people love drama, people love to yell, this project just, it's no longer.
So really we are hashing out things that are now irrelevant as of a week ago when this comes out.
But this is why we have to ask the hardest question that we've asked on this episode thus far. Why does this matter? First off, I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think the humor value of it is very high. You know why else I think this matters? I think it foreshadows other trends in publishing and the way that writers are trying to make money. Because you know what? I can't even be mad at them for trying to make money. Yo, it's fucking hard out here if you're a writer.
See, but the thing is, like, I don't think they were gonna actually profit that much off of this.
Even like visibility and stuff, like, right? Like it's just hard out there if you're a writer. Like it's like a shit market.
This is also why it's unclear, because even if we do that whole like blockchain tree thing of like Isabel's story was influenced by this person's story, which was influenced by this person's story, which was influenced by Ransom Riggs, you still end up, does that mean that any time an NFT of a story is sold, these authors profit?
You know, it's really unclear. Although, okay, do you think anyone was the bad guy here?
I think the bad guy was honestly maybe the tech world people that were helping them on this, that just did not understand how book people would react. Because I feel like I definitely run in book circles more than I run in like tech Twitter circles. Mm-hmm. And it's like you say NFT and people are out.
Yeah.
And I do think, again, that this reaction is valid because they just see crypto and they're like, oh yeah, it's Dogecoin, a currency that literally does not exist, and this is what people are destroying the planet for.
Yeah.
It's very valid anger.
I get it. But I kind of feel like in this case, like, it's the opposite of our last episode because nobody's the bad guy. It's just everyone being an idiot. I feel like there wasn't malicious intent here in the way that there was potentially some malicious intent in our last episode.
Honestly, I think that I personally am the bad guy here because I am writing a long-form article about the drama.
So you're the one profiting off of this in the end.
Oh my god, you're so right.
But then also, I'm also the bad guy because we're making a podcast episode about this right now. So we have effectively monetized this drama.
Okay, but our podcast makes so little money, which is why you should join our Patreon at patreon.com/wowoftrue. We have a Discord now. That's the pitch. That's it. That's the ad.
Wow, that was such a short ad break. And so well placed.
Given that I am writing about this, I do need to be able to answer the question of why do I think that this is interesting? And I think that this is interesting because it shows us how can a Web3 project be successful moving forward? What kind of education do people need? What kind of hangups do people have? Which I'm glad that people have such environmental hangups about crypto generally because, like...
caring about the environment is a good thing, yeah.
Yeah. I always just am very fascinated and curious about how internet drama unfolds, because I feel like internet drama is real drama because the internet is we live on the internet.
Yeah, there are real people there, unfortunately.
We are cyborgs. I mean, I think that's kind of the premise of our whole podcast, is that the way that people interact on the internet is interesting because it's reflective of how we interact as humans, because there's becoming a smaller and smaller divide between URL and IRL life. Fucking killing it.
Yeah, no, that was a great fucking blurb right there. I feel like that's our cut. I think the thing is people just really like publishing drama.
I feel like writers really like drama because writers all want to be the main character.
I think that is completely accurate.
You become a writer because you're not the main character, so you want to create a main character, which means that you are the main character because it is you created the guy.
But sometimes I just want the fictional guys to kiss.
That's why people write fanfiction.
But hey, if you scrape the serial numbers off, that's original, baby.
And then you publish it as Red, White, and Royal Blue.
And see, maybe that's what people should be doing instead of trying to do Realms of Ruin.
Go off, Casey. Go off.
And on that note, I feel like we're done here. I feel like we got off topic very much by the end, similar to how Realms of Ruin lost its plot 2 seconds into its existence.
What even is the Realms of Ruin story?
I kind of want to know now. What do you think it was going to be about? Okay, so it's probably post-apocalyptic, Realms of Ruin, fantasy.
There's the prologue, which says, "There is almost nothing that the 5 realms have in common, save one thing. The ruin must be contained at all cost."
Ooh.
Long ago, a city of wizards, summoned a powerful force called the Ruin, which they hoped to control but could not. It unleashed hellish monsters upon the city, largely destroying it and killing most of its population. The Ruin would have poisoned and tainted the rest of the world too, had the sorcerer elite not given up the fight, abandoned the city, and encircled it with a magical wall called the Palisade. And then it goes on for a couple more paragraphs.
The thing is, this sounds pretty cool. I'm kind of into it. I'm always a slut for wizards.
I know. I mean, that's why we have a group chat called Wizard Fiction, which N.K. Jemisin acknowledged in real life, but not on Twitter, which is a really weird role reversal because I feel like usually I get acknowledged way more on Twitter than on real life.
How does this make you feel?
I mean, speaking of just writer drama and Twitter, when we made our kidney friend, bad art friend episode, you could not go on Twitter without seeing people talking about this. And I did have multiple instances of me in real life talking to people and being like, "Do you know about the kidney thing?" And they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" So I feel like there is probably the same cognitive dissonance for these writers who are getting dragged on Twitter and then they go to the coffee shop and literally nobody cares about Realms of Ruin.
I feel like that's the whole problem with this project, though, is that nobody cared about Realms of Ruin.
Because nobody knew what it was because it didn't exist yet. But the first couple paragraphs of it seem kind of interesting.
I feel like we're done here.
We're done here. Gotta get out.
Alright, if you liked this episode, tell a friend. Word of mouth is how we grow, and maybe perhaps leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you to everyone who left a review so far, and thank you to all of our Patreon patrons. Shout out to Zoe Stoller, Bray, Andre, Grant, Ultra Lord from Jimmy Neutron specifically. Brian, you have to tell me again what you want, I've forgotten. Another shout out to Sam Rizer, who made our podcast music. You can find us online at wowiftrue.com or on Twitter as @wowifTruePod and Instagram and Facebook as @wowiftrue. If you want to throw us a couple of dollars, buy us some Bitcoin, just kidding, slide right into our Patreon at patreon.com/wowoftrue. And if you had your 15 seconds of fame, have a really good idea for a collaborative writing NFT situation, or know someone who does, slide right into our Twitter DMs. And until next time, let's get famous on the internet.